Hello and welcome to the CNBC-TV18 special. I'm Shereen Bhan and we're coming to you from the EY World Entrepreneur 2016 Awards in Monte Carlo. We're here. This is, of course, our annual visit, and joining us today is Uschi Schreiber, Vice Chair at EY for Global Markets. Appreciate you joining us, Uschi, on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Well, let me start by asking you, how has the program changed this year? Are you seeing any specific sectors that are being represented more in comparison to the others?
As you know, this is really the Oscars of entrepreneurship, and every year we see a little bit of a change. What we've seen in the last few years is many more businesses that come from a technology perspective or that are technology enabled. So these are businesses that find solutions to maybe long-standing problems, but they're using technology to respond to this. And so I think we're seeing more technology driven. We are seeing many opportunities, in particular, that entrepreneurs respond to in the health sector. Health really is very much a rising industry. And then, of course, across the board, we're seeing some of the more traditional industries, like consumer products or like manufacturing or so on. But definitely a move towards more technology being used to create new business models.
You know, since you're talking about technology, 2013, the World Entrepreneur was Uday Kotak from India. And of course, you know, the traditional financial services business is now being disrupted by mobile wallets and payment banks and so on and so forth. Do you believe that financial technology is going to be a hot space for continued innovation? Is that what you're seeing at this point in time?
Oh, we are definitely seeing that. There's absolutely no question around this. Mobile obviously is a very, very big component of all of that, using mobile technology for banking and so on. But also we're seeing innovations such as blockchain. I mean, creating much more secure ways of moving things around that are really transforming the financial services industry and in particular banking. In fact, we had the founder of PayPal here yesterday, who was in fact exactly talking about this and talking about the transformation in the banking context, in particular for people in emerging economies, or even people who have previously not had any way of banking. So I think we're seeing very, very big changes there. Probably have only just seen the beginning of that.
And we've probably only just seen the beginnings of things like artificial intelligence, virtual reality, automation, robotics. You know, how excited are you about that, and what's the kind of representation from across these sectors that you're seeing?
Oh, I'm certainly excited about it. I mean, I think that we live in incredibly exciting times in that regard, because pretty much every industry, every business is disrupted by technology, and what that generates is innovation. And so I already touched on healthcare. I mean, we're seeing significant changes there. We're seeing the Internet of Things that will present real opportunities for managing how we live, how we manage our health very, very fundamentally differently. We're seeing so many changes around artificial intelligence, not quite yet at the tipping point where we are seeing this everywhere, but certainly it starts to have an impact on, unfortunately in some instances, replacing people out of roles, and that's a challenge that needs to be managed. But also, of course, to do the ability to do things much, much faster, to analyze data much more effectively and so on. So interesting times, some unknowns in this, but certainly plenty of upside from a business perspective and a societal perspective.
You know, you touched upon an issue that I was going to talk to you about. You preempted my question, because for a country like India, you know, we do have this demographic advantage, but when you talk about automation, you talk about artificial intelligence, it then begs the question, what do you do about job creation? You know, and that's going to be something that governments across the world are going to have to grapple with, especially emerging markets that do enjoy this demographic advantage. What kind of challenges do you foresee that throwing up?
I think there are challenges for government as well as for business, and entrepreneurs have to be part of the response to this. You might have seen that there was a jobs report by the World Economic Forum at the beginning of this year, which basically foreshadowed that by 2020 there would be net job losses of about 5 million as a result of automation, and that's really the first wave of automation that we are seeing. Now, the substitution rate of jobs is not as great as the job losses, so there's clearly a challenge there. Our recent survey on job creation showed that entrepreneurs are creating more jobs than big corporates, and they're doing this in particular in new innovative industries or in businesses that disrupt old ways of doing it. So the importance of entrepreneurs that we've always known about is about to increase, I think, because that's where we're seeing greater increases around job creation, and in particular in India. But I think you know, there are challenges about how one will manage inequalities in future, and I think now more than ever, government entrepreneurs and business working very closely together, because no one can do it alone, on finding the right solutions at a society-wide level. That will be very, very important.
You know, since we're here celebrating the spirit of entrepreneurship, let me ask you about what you see in the ecosystem, especially when it comes to funding. There's a lot of concern, especially in markets like India, because a lot of the startup depend on funding coming in from the US, for instance. Do you see capital being squeezed considerably even through 2016 and perhaps getting even worse?
So the first thing is that what entrepreneurs are telling us, that access to funding is their number one issue, no matter where you are. And of course, around the world, unless there are early startup programs, for example, initiated by governments, or the right tax treatment, then entrepreneurs are often forced to find funding in their own families or from their friends and so on. So access to funding is very, very important, in particular at the startup phase. Then the next phase, when it comes to financing at a point where, you know, someone wants to scale, I think, you know, that's equally important. So I think governments have a very big role to play.
But what kind of role? Should they be giving out tax sweeteners? Should they be actually investing in startups through a fund? What should governments be doing?
Well, first of all, we know what works, right? We know it works, for example, to have the right tax treatment. We know it's very important that bankruptcy laws, for example, are right. And India, in fact, has just addressed that. So that's very good to see. We know it's very important that governments facilitate networks of entrepreneurs, so there can be shared funding, crowdfunding, but also mutual support. We know it's very important that education systems actually facilitate entrepreneurial values and entrepreneurial behavior. And so it's really the whole mixture of this. And then the final thing is government and business working together to really create whole communities of people who are focused on entrepreneurship and startups, because that attracts VCs. And we know many VCs, venture capitalists, will not necessarily fund unless you have failed once or twice, because they want to see that you can actually get up and keep going and that you are serious. But that means you need an ecosystem, a community of people in your country or, you know, in a part of the country, so you give that, I don't know, certainty that there is something real happening. You know, that it's not just one entrepreneur here or there, but that there's a whole community of people working together and learning from each other. That's really important.
So in your assessment, because you're through this program, you're looking at what's happening in different markets, where do you think this synergy between what governments are doing and the entrepreneurial ecosystem coming together, the alignment is right and exciting today?
I think there's no right or wrong, because every country is slightly different. It's really, is the balance right? I mean, we used to look at that through the entrepreneurial barometer that EY does, which basically looks at those indicators I was just talking about. And what you see is that across the world, you know, every country is slightly different. So I know India, for example, is doing a whole lot of things, as I was just mentioning, around bankruptcy laws, for example, but also, you know, facilitating, I suppose, a culture of entrepreneurship. But so much also depends on other things, like is the right infrastructure in place around internet access, for example, and in particular high-speed internet. So I think every country needs to tailor this to their own context. And I note India, for example, has just improved significantly in terms of ease of doing business.
We're trying.
Looked at every year by the World Bank. So, you know, there's been a significant improvement. So removing red tape and those kind of things really, really matter. So it depends on where you are. I mean, some people think Estonia, for example, very small country, is doing really amazing things. You see what the UK and London in particular have done as a startup hub, really. It's very much about attracting entrepreneurs and creating an environment that is easy to work in, but also supportive. And then, of course, there's Silicon Valley, there's Tel Aviv, there's increasingly Berlin, increasingly China is moving on this one now, Shenzhen, areas around Shanghai and so on. So there are those hubs. But clearly we need to create more of that and learn from those examples.
And I hope the next time you'll add India to that list as well. But
I look forward to that. I hope that happens.
Uschi, thanks very much for joining us on CNBC-TV18. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
With that, it is time for us to wrap up this special edition from Monte Carlo. From all of us, goodbye. Many thanks for watching.